Okay, Jul, it's all yours, mate.
Right. Okay. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Good to see you all, and good to see a good number of people. Hi to familiar faces. Hi to less familiar faces. I don't know if there are any. Looking down here, I see a lot of familiar ones. And one or two I don't know that well. So just briefly tonight, what we've got is me waffling on for a couple of moments. Then James is going to talk to us about mobile apps. Gary's going to have a look back at 2020 and how things have affected him. And I see that we're being asked how to add the cool titles at the bottom. State secret.
Present the secret, I'm afraid, yeah.
Maybe tell you later. Then we got this big discussion about, is Claris taking FileMaker in the right direction for professional developers, which will probably be the main part of tonight's meeting. And we've got a quiz going on since it's New Year. I will post that link in the chat, assuming you didn't have time to set anything up, Gary.
No, I didn't. I tried. I got part way through it and then work took over, so I do apologise. I'll try and get something built for next time.
Well, you mean we've got to do it again?
Well, yeah, I've got to build something.
So I'll put that in the chat. Just feel free to have a browse of that whilst we're having the meeting. It's just a bit of historical nonsense trivia about FileMaker that I've cobbled together to keep us in the spirit of having a quiz. I will talk about the answers at the end. In the meantime, let's go. James, off to you.
Hello, everybody. James from Storganize here. I've done a little presentation because last time I did this, I completely lost where I was. So I'm going to mostly just be reading off the slides. So here we go. Let's allow that. And you should now be able to see a lovely keynote presentation saying progressive web apps.
Correct.
What do? We write FileMaker databases, and we like doing that, and we know how to do that, and we'll do it very well, I'm sure. But then somebody comes along to you and they say, oh, can you do me a mobile app? And you say, yeah, we can do that. We can do a FileMaker Go version of it, but it only works if you've got an iPad or an iPhone, or you can do it on WebDirect if you've got Android, which is it's all right. But there's various ways it's not all right. So let's have a little look and see what. The first problem is you can't get to the next slide. There you go. So we can all create them, and it takes us to our WebDirect homepage like this. Sorry, not our WebDirect, our FileMaker Go homepage, where we can double click on whatever apps that we want. But we do have to go through the FileMaker Go portal to get there. And also, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty lazy when it comes to doing the iPhone and iPad layouts, because I always assume that someone's going to look at it and then just go, oh, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to go back to doing it with PC or my Mac. So sometimes we do it well, but usually it's a bit of a compromise. But the main issue, as I've alluded to there, is that we have to go through the FileMaker Go app, which takes more clicks than our customers like. They just want to go click on the desktop, on the homepage of their iPhone or Android, and get through to the app. Now, if you're on Android, you've got to do it in a convoluted way of adding a URL link to your home screen, which you can click on and it will take you to the WebDirect page. But if that session expires, you get an icon that looks like that on your home screen, which doesn't really say anything good about the app that you're presenting to your client. Now, if you're clever, you'll have opened up the SDK, you've worked through that, you'd have found out how to make your own proper custom app to work natively on iPhones and iPads. Then you'll have started all over again, and you've learned how to do that on Androids, or you'd have used one of the super duper clever systems that they've got to convert the iPad and iPhone SDK version to Android. Frankly, that is way too much effort for me. So, using the power of WebDirect, with a little bit of customization, we can now have something that looks and behaves exactly like an app. There you go. There's my Storganize app there. don't have to go through FileMaker Go, and when it expires, it doesn't look like that. So that is done without the faff. But there's a few things to do. All right, now I'm going to cut straight to the chase because you're all clever people and tell you exactly what it is that I do to create an app that appears like an app on my mobile phone. First thing you need to do is create your favicon set. What that does, if you've not come across them before, is it just creates all the different icons that you need for all the different manifestations of your app. So the icon for the home screen, icon for the icon in the web bit, where that is called, I think it's called a favicon, and so on. It makes about 10, 15 of these icons. I use a thing called realfavicongenerator.net, the link's there. There's plenty of other favicon apps that do exactly the same thing. But what that does is it creates all the apps for you from, creates all the icons for you from an image that you give it. And it also gives you the HTML code to put into your website, which is the next step. So the next step is to create a website, which is kind of the landing place, the middleman. And that's the bit that I've always missed out whenever I've tried to do this before. Now, not being a great website builder, I don't have a marvelous way of hosting websites, but what I have got is an AWS account. And if you create an S3 bucket, you can tell that to actually serve itself as a website, which is virtually free if you've got the account running anyway, and it's really, really easy to set up. I'm not going to teach you how to do that. That's for another lesson. But however you want to do a middleman HTML website, do it your own way, but that's the way I'm doing it. So the third step is to make an HTML landing page for your site. Now this holds the favicons, which we've generated. It shows some text to the customer about how they save the app to their phone. And it has a tiny bit of JavaScript, which sets a cookie on their device. Okay, let's have a little look and see what we got then. So this is the header of the HTML, this index.html page. So this is where you're sending your customers when you first send them to, in effect, download your app. So what this has got is it's got the just the header stuff that you would get for a normal HTML page, and then these 9 lines here are the content that the favicon generator gives you. So this is just diverting everything to the correct bit of the favicon set. I've put in a bit of style here because we've got a button coming up, and then just a tiny bit of style about what the text and size is going to be for the page. Pretty basic. Then we go down to the next part of the page, and this is where the loveliness happens. So we've got a tiny bit of JavaScript, which is defined here, and the source to it is in your S3 bucket. So we've got 2 JavaScript calls. The first is setCookie, a function of setCookie, and we call that cookie fast logon. Then we've got a little bit of text here, HTML text, and then a button at the bottom. And when it's clicked, it calls the JavaScript function setCookie. So what's that doing? Okay, so when the page loads with this one here, it runs a JavaScript function to check if a cookie has been set. If the cookie's been set, then we'll go and find out what that JavaScript does in a second. But if the cookie's been set, it takes us to the actual content of the app inside FileMaker. If the cookie hasn't been set, then the page appears and it tells the client what to do next. And so this page appears if the cookie hasn't been set. Really, really basic website. I'm not going to claim I'm a great web developer. I just wanted to get some information out there. So all it's saying is, are you on an Android? If you are, then do this. Are you on iOS? If you are, then do this. Once you've done that, once you've added this app to your home screen, then click here. Maybe you don't like that, but frankly, you're coming at this from one link. So it's no more work than people are used to of going to the App Store, searching for an app and downloading it. That's what I think in my head anyway. So they do that, and then clicking here sets the cookie so that we bypass this page at the next stage. So let's take a look at that JavaScript. So we've got a function here of check cookie, and you pass into it the parameter of the name. It then checks to see if the cookie is enabled. It then checks to see if cookies are enabled on your browser. If they aren't, then it'll give you a quick message to say that you need to enable them for this to work. Then it checks to see if the cookie has been set. So if getCookie equals 1, then we do window lock location, which diverts the user to this window. So it takes you from the link that you've just pressed and takes you off here. Now, this is not my Amazon S3 bucket. So this is now taking me to where I'm hosting my FileMaker database. And here is the full link for that. Now, this you'll recognize. Ooh, look at the right bit. This you'll recognize as that is a WebDirect page. So you're using FMI/webd/ and then the name of the app. So that's taking you to the WebDirect page for your FileMaker app. Perfect. That means it could be accessed through any devices on Android or iOS. Now, the key thing here is at the end of that app, the !home URL equals. Now, that is a lovely little bit that is buried in the instruction manual for WebDirect, that if you set the home URL, when WebDirect times out, it sends you back here. Okay, so that now is sending somebody, when they time out of WebDirect, it sends them back to my S3 bucket, which is where I'm hosting my middleman website. So I've just set another page there, which is the refresh page. And all that does is say, you've been logged out, use your app to log back in, rather than being diverted back to the WebDirect homepage where you can see 1, 2, 3, however many apps that person's allowed to see. So there's a couple of other things to do. As you've seen there, we have to create another HTML page, which is called the refresh HTML, which is where you go when WebDirect times you out. It's also useful to create an uninstall version of the index.html file. And that just calls another function in JavaScript to say unset the cookie. So it gets rid of that so that it takes you back to the home page rather than diverting you to the app. Then once you've created those 3 HTML pages, you upload those 3, your links and your container for your favicons and your little JavaScript file. Upload all that to your S3 bucket, and then it's all to do in FileMaker. So you create a WebDirect privilege set in your file and you assign that to guest. You set the file to open automatically as guest. Now at this point, you're going to be saying, whoa, security. So what we do is you might want to create a separate login file that uses the main file as a shadow table, and then you do the security between the two. So you've got guest access going in to the front end, allowing you in as WebDirect, in as guest, automatically opens, and then it opens on your own login page or whatever it is you want to serve to the client at the first entry. So then you send your customers the link to the index.html file that's on my S3 bucket. They click on that. They follow the instructions. They save the icon to their device. They then click OK, which sets the cookie, if you remember that. And then when they click the app on their home screen, it opens as if by magic. So now I simply click on that logo there on my phone, and I'm taken, in this case, to the news about my kitchen's progress. And I can probably show you that actually in action. So what we've got here are the app's links. So there are 3 links. You would send the setup link is the first one that you'd send out. I would include an uninstall link with that as well, just to let people get rid of it if they want to. The refresh link isn't something that you send out, but that's the one that WebDirect times out and sends you there. So if I click the setup link here, I'm sent to my homepage on my Amazon S3 bucket. As you can see there, I'm on iOS. So I'm going to tap the share button at the bottom here. And then I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to click add to home screen as it says. And I'm going to click add there. Okay, so now I've got this icon here at the bottom saying Storganize. If I click that, you'll see the first page flash up first. Then I click here to set the cookie. Nobody knows they're setting a cookie, but that's what that does. That takes me there. Now, if I get rid of that by force quitting it. Now, when I click my Storganize icon logo, it takes me via that page directly to my app every time. Now, I can't time out and show you the log out, but when this logs me out, it takes me to the refresh page, which is there. So all that does is it takes me away from the app, doesn't show me the web direct page, and shows me that. Me, as a user, I don't care. I just get rid of that and I press the app again, which is all you need them to do. So that's it. It's as simple as that, he says. But I would be very keen to hear what other people might think of that, because as with all these things, this seems like a really cool idea to me. But what security problems have I missed? What other issues have I forgotten about? Anything that's grabbed you as I've been doing that as sort of, what are you doing? I'd be very keen to hear.
I'll open it up to the floor. Anyone got any comments? So, nice, James.
Thank you.
Anyone?
I take the stunned silence as everybody saying, no, it's brilliant. It's as secure as you like.
The guest thing initially concerned me. I think you covered that by having a shadow thing running. So I think
I've tried that once before, and I tried to do the guest entry and thought, this is such a great idea when you open it. And then I suddenly thought, well, that's not really a very good idea at all. That's leaving everything wide open. So I only use a login database file with globals in it, and then that brings the data in from the main table with the correct login. So you have to deal with that security your end by doing a login in your front table.
Okay. I haven't got any questions about it. Cool.
Okay. The only suggestion I'd make would be that you could take it sort of one step further, and it's pretty straightforward to use AWS Route 53 to do the DNS. So you end up with a URL that doesn't let people know it's on Amazon S3.
Yes.
So that's sort of my only suggestion, but otherwise it looks really cool.
Cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's I use Route 53 for most of my sites. I think I probably didn't bother with that because I wanted to sort of just show you the route and the bones of it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense to do that. Super. But yeah, if anybody's
I'll just put in the chat. There's a link to something on GitHub, which does that, allowing you to log in using HTML. So you actually do get the security experience, which I'm sure you could find a way to fit into what you're doing, so that rather than going just straight into a file, you go into a logon page as a middleman as well. And then if you want to do that as an app which isn't what you showed, but where you do want people to log in, I've just posted a link in the chat to where the
is that using the root directory of WebDirect and almost serving that as your own homepage?
Yeah, that is using the root directory.
No, this is where you do what you're doing, which is create a logon. But what the logon does is handle the username and the password, but it passes that to the FileMaker file to do the logon.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool.
I've been using it for a few customer systems over the last 12 months, and it's very successful. And because it as soon as your point about when you've finished or you get kicked out, what you want to go back to is the log on page again.
Yeah.
Not some other page. It does that round trip, but it's worth looking at what's been done there.
Yeah.
And seeing whether you can integrate that in what you've done.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. I'll download that, John. Cheers.
John, the stuff with the root folder, is that just using it for the custom URL? Is that all it's using the root folder for, to display your custom page? So it's not using anything else in the root folder on the server?
No, it's not. You don't put it on the server. It's doing what James has done. You host it somewhere So you give somebody a URL that doesn't look anything like a FileMaker URL, just saying go to that page /index and log on, and then it does the redirection for you effectively.
Cool.
Cool.
I like that. I shall have a look at that. Cool.
Nice, James. How long did it take you roughly, do you think, to sort that out each time?
Oh, actually, each time it's not too bad now. It probably takes a 2-3 hours. Yeah, the initial obligatory Googling and finding out how everybody else did it, every single aspect of it took days, weeks, probably. But yeah, no, it's the actual process itself is all right. And now I've now got a point where I'm saying to people, well, I'll include this in a build if it's over a certain amount of money. You know, I'll throw in your own mobile app, which is quite a nice little carrot to dangle in front of clients' faces.
Yeah, nice. Anyone else got any questions on it? Not prompted anything else? Well, you weren't slated, James. I think that was generally popular.
That's good news. Either that or everyone fell asleep.
No, not at all.
You got anything else you want to add to it?
Me?
No.
I've exhausted everything that I could possibly tell you there. Aside from, if anybody wants some of that code and that JavaScript, those JavaScript functions, then do give me a shout. It's all relatively straightforward.
Can you let me have the presentation to put on the website? I'll put it on the FMBug website.
Yeah, sure.
So it'll be available for everyone on there.
Perfect.
Great. We're 10 minutes ahead of schedule. That's never happened.
Sorry about that.
That was obviously, I gave you far too generous amount of time. So unless anyone else has got anything to add on that, and please do talk about it later if you have. Just join in. I don't know how long you're hanging around, James. You'll probably get fed up with us all talking.
Don't know what you mean.
Don't know what you mean, no. Should we move straight on to you, Gary, and you'll look back at how this year has affected you at Forbidden Planet?
Yeah, I'll do mine. Mine's going to be short and sweet, but it was just saying that I felt I wanted to share with the group really what happened. So give me a second. Some of you will know this, some of you won't. Share that. Hopefully you see that front screen. Fingers crossed. Thumbs up if you do. Good, fine. Just some background. Some of you know me, quite a lot of you know me that are on this already, and some of you don't. I work for a company called Forbidden Planet, and we sell science fiction, everything science fiction, basically, from toys, comics, graphic novels, to TARDISes, to lightsabers, you name it, we sell it. And we're also a book publisher as well. And obviously, this has been a challenging year for everybody. We work in retail, and in the UK at the moment, with stores opening, closing, opening, closing, 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 opening, have no idea what's going on. It was a particularly challenging year for us, and I felt I just wanted to give a quick overview of what happened to us. And I don't know if Penny's still on the call. She may still be on the thing. If she's still here, then Penny is she's still here. Penny is the senior developer at Forbidden Planet, so pretty much every piece of code goes through her fingertips. And it was no year like any other, really. So what I've done is just put a couple of slides together. It's just something for discussion, and curious about how everyone else had 2020, really. So from our point of view, here's an overview of what happened. I'll just quickly run through it. So I've laid it out per quarter. So January to March, normal business in January, no problems at all. January to March, everything was going well. Everyone knows what happened in the world. The pandemic hit late December. It started turning into a pandemic sometime in Q1 in 2020. Now, we knew COVID had started, so we were starting to prep for the impact of what was going to happen. Now, in the UK, lockdown happened at the end of March, and as a result of that, come the first bit of April, the entire company had to be turned into remote working, which is what we're working on now. I head up the whole IT division. I'm not just a developer. We don't have a remote working policy in our company, so we've never needed one. We've got a nice big building in London, and everyone goes to the building. And we got the odd little bit of remote working, but nothing major. So for us, it was a complete and utter nightmare that we had to turn 130 to 140 staff to remote working in the space of 2.5 weeks. So I did the biggest purchase of Apple kit I've ever bought in my life, and rolled out nearly 100 laptops in the space of a week and a half and got everyone working remotely, which was all good, all fine, no problems at all. And that was fine. We started working on that. The problem is from our point of view, we had a lot of work to do to make sure the systems worked. And what the slide afterwards is how this is the landscape of what happened to us, and the slide afterwards how it affected us in FileMaker terms. So I'll get to the FileMaker terms in a minute. Sometime in May, we had a security attack on our systems because I think most companies were getting targeted. And as part of that, we activated our disaster recovery, which wasn't a test. And I've given a talk on this. I did a couple of sessions back, just purely highlighting the fact of how important it is to have security, DR covered, because we were susceptible to the point of we had to invoke it. Now, a lot of you do this and test for this, and your tests are great, that's fine. And I know Clive and I have had a conversation on various meetings since I did that presentation of like, physically go test your DR, make sure it actually works, because the amount of times when you may think you never need it, and I hope none of you ever need to invoke it, but when you do, you better be sure it works. And so we had to do that, which was a complete and overhaul to our systems, refactoring various bits of our VM to make sure it then comes back up and everything's fine. And at that same time, what was happening, and we host our own website. So our website's got close to about 170,000 products on it. At that time of the point of invoking our DR, the online started booming. So you've got the point that the only thing that's making the company revenue is tied to the security systems that we are now turning systems off and then invoking our DR. So it was probably the most stressful time in my career in 25 years of working in IT by far. I've never had anything like it. Penny would nod to the fact that if she was on camera, that it was a horrible time for her as well, because all of our systems that we run are FileMaker. We run our whole business off FileMaker. Our website is run off of Python, but it uses FileMaker backend to fuel it. So everything is FileMaker owned and run. So the whole company for a period of time is down. If the FileMaker systems go down, the company's down. So that was where we were at the end of June. Thankfully, we got past that. We got out of that hole, and the recovery started again as retail started to get open. And at that point, we then thought, right, brilliant, business is going back to normal. The online business kept on growing, 2, 3, 4, 5-fold increase online. I think Akis mentioned earlier about issues with supply, and we then found out we couldn't get supplies of our products into the warehouse. We couldn't then warehouse the stock correctly. So that was a bit of a nightmare. We came to October, and October, the UK went into a tiered lockdown system, which wasn't a full lockdown, but it might as well have been. So it didn't make a lot of difference. So our retail then shut again, and then we continued with the online, kept on growing. So we'd literally moved a large proportion of business from bricks and mortar across the country to online in the space of a few months, basically. And then we had Black Friday, which was busy online, which made the online even worse. And then we followed in straight into Christmas. Now, the government helped us out at Christmas because they shut retail down a week before Christmas. Well, helped us out to the point of the chaos that we didn't have to worry about COVID and supplying customers, to the point that we lost a huge amount of revenue again. And that became our challenge throughout the whole year, is how we manage revenue, keep the business open, keep it running when you've got a large proportion of your business being shut. Now, I'm sure all of you have got very similar stories that you've had over this time. Now, from our point of view, I've tried to highlight this with emojis as the point of how we were reacting on the next slide, because I think it's a clear indication of where we were and what our state of mind was. So this is how it lays out with FileMaker. So January to March, this is Penny's idea and my idea in the start of the new year, 2020, for everything's rosy, everything's good. We'll start planning for much need development on our key systems. And then we realized the systems needed to be accessed via Wi-Fi, which we hadn't even planned for because we run across a gigabit network and we thought, great. Our FileMaker systems are not small, as some of you will know. I move a vast amount of data. We've got roughly around about 5-6 million records get moved every night. And trying to do that across systems in multiple locations at home, when 100 people are on a basically gigabit network on a LAN, on Ethernet, that's no problems. You put those 100 people onto Wi-Fi, just doesn't work. So the last bit of that slide is Penny and I mass code changes for the next quarter to try and get the systems actually functional. We got there, we got it working, only to have the DR kick in, which then just pulled the rug from under our feet and we had to start again pretty much. So some of that rollback we did as part of our DR systems, we lost some of the code we'd put in place. DR wasn't as good as it should have been, but that's why I've done a talk on that about you should basically test those systems and make sure they're rock solid. And then we got past the DR, and then we were there at the end of June. We're going, right, brilliant, everything's moving fine. We hope the key systems work for our online business because it's growing at a rate that we've never had before. We continue with the key development. So our development we were supposed to do in January, we didn't really start until July. So there's a bit of a problem. We never quite got there. We started to panic that the legacy systems that we had were becoming unstable, which they were, because they weren't built to cope with the remote access latency, the ongoing demand on their systems. And then as part of that, partly because of me, because I run IT and I'm head of the division, I then put a complete security overhaul because of what happened with the DR thing in place between July and September, which then impacted our FileMaker systems, our backend systems, our web systems, how they will communicate with each other, what processes they communicate over. Our whole firewalls were completely rebuilt from the ground up and changed because we wanted to make sure everything was rock solid. That caused us no end of problems. Come October, we were then had demands from the senior teams about revenue because we knew we were going into another lockdown. So our idea was just to try and fast track as where possible everything to do with maximizing revenue. Someone came up with a fabulous idea to hire 23 extra iPads and 28 staff in the warehouse overnight, which literally head of HR, I don't know how she did it, she managed to recruit nearly 20 odd people in the space of 3 days. So that added demands to those systems as well. And I'll be honest, when it got to November, we were literally just, the last symbol that's on there is just praying and hoping that we just get through this. So, and to give you an idea of the comparisons, I put that up there. So the idea is they do actually tie in. So when COVID started, we realized what we were doing. So that was our year. And from me as a point of overseeing the IT, it's a year I never ever want to repeat. It's not a year that's been nice to work in. It's not the best year we had. Now I'm hoping that 2021 is going to be a much better year, but I was just curious to everyone else that's out there, how they got on with their systems. Some of your systems will be much better built than what we have. I have systems that are 20 years old and they're still running fine. And the power of FileMaker allowed me to upgrade from version 2 to version 20, which is coming down the pipe, is lovely, but it's not something I'm proud of, but it does work. But I think having a year like we've had makes you realize the only thing I can advise, and I'm sure I've had it from various developers that are on tonight, is the fact that you need to refactor your code, you need to modernize your code, you need to update everything, and you need to make sure they run trim and it runs efficiently. And that is something in earnest that Penny and I are actively doing at the moment and trying to move this forward. But it's no mean feat. And I know Roberts gave me some advice a couple of sessions ago about how to approach that. So we're working as far as that's concerned. So I'm curious about what other people think. So, and all I can say is it's not a year I want to repeat. And I hope 2021 for all of us is better than what it was for 2020, really. So it was a quick overview of how it affected us, and it affected us quite large. So I'll welcome any comments, any discussions you want to have with that. So
Gary, I think you're right on this, on the top. What's been happening to all of us, because most of us in Sweden as well has been working using Wi-Fi or remote or whatever it might have been. And what I've really learned this year is the need of using the log file called top statistics.
Yeah.
And using FM perception to figure out where is it that actually I can do some changes to my code, which is going to affect the users. because otherwise it's like finding a needle in a haystack. It's no way to find where is the problem and where might be the bottlenecks. So with those two, the log file and FM perception, I've been able to do a huge difference to some of the functions that I thought was optimized up to 100%, but were nearly not that when I actually start looking at them from another point of view. And I think that's probably where you've been as well, like trying to figure out where the problems are.
Yeah, we've got Zabbix installed on our server, so we get the log files analyzed. So we see that sort of stuff coming through. We can see the metrics of what's happening with the servers. We saw one where it had 105 remote active sessions on one database, and normally it sits around about 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So, and then it went to Wi-Fi. It's like, what the hell? It's just because they didn't log off. They never ever finished their session, so it just kept all the sessions open on the server. So you're absolutely right. That's been the biggest challenge, trying to find out where the holes are in the system, where the bottlenecks are, and to the point that Penny and I are starting to look at some of our core systems as going, we're starting again. We're literally going to start again, and we're going to rebuild the damn thing and start with a fresh, modernized, as I say, approach. But some of the legacy things we won't be able to turn off for years. So it's that approach of just scratch the surface, fix the little things, and hopefully then make it better. So far, we've got through it. It's working. It's working fine at the moment, but it's challenging. Little things we found is the online business went so big. Bearing in mind it's all driven by FileMaker. We found out when you're adding millions of records to something that wasn't designed to have millions of records added to it. Now I've built other systems with tens of millions of records, but that system wasn't designed to have that. That started off as a system that just did a mail order business through paper when people used to apply for stuff. And then we literally converted that and went, we'll just plug that into the online several years ago and thought, that'd be all right, won't be a problem. But it grew this year so fast. It was just like, it just caught us completely off guard. It was a real wake up call.
You talked about a very important thing there. And I think it was in 2017 when Wim de Kort, and I can't remember who he was speaking with at DevCon, but it was a session about Zabbix. And Zabbix is so important when you have a lot of servers to keep track of what's happening on each one of those. If you have a redundant server, to make sure what you have at disaster planet is always going to be up to date. And in the Zabbix, you can set up so many different notifications so that you will have control of everything. And one of the things you just talked about is the RDIP, where you control how many calls you're allowed to do from an API or from the PHP web engine or whatever it might be. And it's really, really important to set up the Zabbix correctly. And from my own hostings, I can tell that Soliants are very good about dealing out templates. So if you want to start going that way, they have a really good start out templates to steal. That's for free as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I after that session with Wim, I went and spoke to him, and he was just like, "Yeah, fine, we're publicising this and putting it out there." And within that, me getting back within months, I put Zabbix in. So we've had Zabbix for a few years now. So, and you're right, it gives you such an insight that you wouldn't normally have. We've triggered ours. We've done some work on it that we trigger those notifications to fire into Slack. So any alert goes into Slack, so then it's broadcast out to everybody in Slack. So that's it. Without that, we just wouldn't know when a server's then about to break. You get that advance warning before it actually goes wrong, so you can actually dive onto it and deal with it. So. And yeah, I'd imagine you've all had the same sort of stuff last year, and I just hope all of us end up with a better year this year, because I don't want to repeat that again. So.
Gary, I had a quick question. Do you have any plans following this or any strategy for keeping your systems more up to date in the future, or making it easier to keep them updated and in line with the current developments?
Install SQL. No, I'm joking. It's a challenge. I think it depends on how large your systems are. I think if we build it with modern technologies and modern approach, which we do with our new system. So we build add-on new system. We've got, Penny will probably tell me the exact number. I think we've got over 60 solutions within our organization. Now, any solution that's been built in the last 2 or 3 years, 4 years is in a modern approach. So it's relatively simple to upgrade. It's not a problem. Our warehouse system we wrote 5 years ago is modern build, and that works perfectly. And the irony is we built that with iPads in mind, because we've got about 70 odd iPads in the warehouse now. So we built that with them in mind, and it works brilliantly because it's built that way. We've got to look at some massive behemoth systems that we built that are horrible and a nightmare, and they're massive, and we've got to then compartmentalize those down and work on that. I think over this year, if we can get to that and get those refactored, I think that will answer that question, Jul, is the fact that they will be geared to be upgraded. They'll be more modular, so it'll be easier just to go, right, we're going to update and modernize that module, and we know it's been built in a way it'll still hook into the other systems. But it's just modernized building over legacy building.
Gary, have you ever thought about setting up like a redundant server where you sync data back and forward? So you have your development, you have two kind of production areas where you have synchronization of data back and forward with a redundant server?
I would love to. Don't get the time to do that.
That's what I do. I have two customers which is really hectic about their data. They need to be up 24/7. So I have my development area, I have the production, and then I have a redundant area where I use MirrorSync to sync that data back and forward. And it's done every 10 seconds. So I know that data is always going to be the same on the redundant server. So if production server goes down or anything is happening, I can just easily switch by just doing a repoint of the area. So everyone is going against the redundant area. And then everything is going to be up and running in a few minutes.
That's the approach I wouldn't mind on some of the key systems. Absolutely, the warehouse system and the online ordering system, definitely. That's something that we need to look at and see how we do that. We run VMware anyhow, so we're snapshotting VMs regularly, so we can use the VM technology to then help us. At the moment, that's what we do, and that was part of the DR stuff that we had to invoke. So with what happened to us, so it's more the point that because of that, we were able to roll back very quickly and switch and get very minimal loss of any data really. My view is I would like to get it more like what you were saying, is more transactional. So therefore, I want it that as an order comes in from the website, it goes off to the production and off to the testing area simultaneously. That would be nirvana in my view. That would be ideal. So that way, if it does go wrong, you can just throw a switch and go, it doesn't matter, we're over here now. That would be what you need to do. I know it can be done. It's all in the coding, and it's all in the way you then write your scripts and write your code of where you write the records. It's totally achievable. It's just getting time. I think it's, as always, when you work within a business, we're not external developers, we're internal, but our job is to keep that business running. And when I go to them and say, I want 2 months worth of dev time to refactor this, they're like, no. But we'll chip away at it. But you're right, I think that approach would be key. It'd be great if we could achieve that. And that was me. So, Jul, do you want to move on to the next one? Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Anyone else got any questions for Gary or any comments or just brief word of their own experience? We're still about 10 minutes ahead of time, so I can move on to the next.
We had quite a similar situation on a large old system, and that basically had been designed for people working on gigabit Ethernet inside one office.
Yeah.
And then when everybody's working over a VPN, that threw up a lot of performance problems that are still going on. So been kind of tackling that bit by bit. But one of the other issues that cropped up was because everyone's over the VPN, because everyone's spending their whole day on it, they're on Zoom meetings, so when you've got 40 or 50 people connected to the FileMaker system, but they've also got Zoom meetings going on constantly over the same network connection. They're frequently listening to Spotify. There's just so much other network traffic that was basically stealing bandwidth from the FileMaker system. So their IT people have had to do a lot of looking at how can they try to mitigate that type of issue as well. So trying to remind people to log off and disconnect when they're not working. But because if someone's still connected, well, you'd have people connected overnight to the VPN and they'd be watching films at night and other people are trying to work. And it's just, there was a lot of bandwidth issues going on.
We never had that sort of problem with the bandwidth. We got gigabit pipe out from our head office, and our data center. So the bandwidth was there to supply the clients. The problem we had was the latency. It's the fact that
Yeah.
you did a find over Ethernet, and it's just like, okay, it takes 2 seconds. You barely even see the find box. You run it over Wi-Fi, or you run it over someone saying, well, I've got a really fast internet connection. That was the first thing we did. We did an audit of all of our staff's internet connections. That was the first thing we did. And people come back saying, my internet's really fast, and you've got like 10 meg and 1 meg up. No, it's not going to be fast enough to do that stuff. So, and that's where we found the problem. The biggest issue we found was the DB cache, which I've mentioned before, so I'm going to mention it again. The DB cache that's stored, well, certainly is on a Mac, and it is on Windows as well. But look at that cache file. According to the technology, they're saying the DB cache will optimize over Wi-Fi and make it run better. Yes, it does. If you don't mind waiting 10 minutes to open the file first off, because that's what it takes. So we wrote a little Apple script on all the Macs that when they first reboot their machine in the morning and they log in, it clears the DB cache file out completely. So it just gets rid of it. Because if that cache file becomes old, it then has to do a compare against the server of your cache file to see what it needs to use. That compare has got to go over Wi-Fi. That actually hinders you to open the database. Once it's opened, it's fine. Now, those people that have got, most people have fast download, but upload is really slow. And it's that problem of comparing that DB cache locally, uploading and comparing against the server takes time. If you clear the cache out, most people's downloads are 10, 20 times faster. So it just downloads a new cache file from the server really quickly, and you're in the database within seconds. That's something we've spotted early on. So if you create a little script to clear the DB cache out, when they log in the morning, they'll get on straight away. And then they're up and working. While they're working, in the background, that cache file is being rebuilt again. So if they do another find, it'll have to rebuild that cache, but it does help, certainly helps performance.
Where is that cache file, Gary? I'm sure you've told us that.
On a Mac, it's in the user library and then caches, and then you'll see in there FileMaker. Now, in that FileMaker folder, as the evening goes on, I'll get the actual string and post it in the chat. But once you're in there, there's only one folder you need to clear, and it's the DB cache folder that's in the FileMaker path. Now, try it. Find a database that you log on to, any of you, that when you first open it, you get the wheel of doom, shall we say, from the Mac saying, I'm trying to find the server and trying to open it, yeah? Once you've found that file, it does that, quit FileMaker, clear the cache file and do the same open. I will guarantee you it opens instantly. All right, but I'll post the actual string. It is there on Windows as well, but I can't remember where it is on Windows, so off the top of my head, because we're at 80% Mac. But there is a Windows cache folder as well, but I'll paste it in the chat for everyone to find. So. Oh.
Unless John and Robert have put a couple of links into the chat already on the subject, so that's good.
That's it. They've done it. They've nailed it. Christian's done it. Thanks, Christian.
Christian as well.
Yeah, and the link. Well, the link to the blog is not about the cache file location, but there are feature flags that have been introduced recently in the product, and the Stalin blog does a good review. I don't quite recall the flag itself for the cache file, but from recollection, I think there is one, and so it's worth looking into that to see if you'd want to address that from that angle.
I want to add one thing to that, Robert, is the fact that we found over Wi-Fi when they had a crash, when they went into the file again, if it had supporting files, so you're opening one file and they've got 5 other files that need to open, it comes up file missing because it couldn't resolve the cache. So all you need to do is just quit FileMaker, delete the cache, and then go back in. That file missing you're getting, that secondary file that then says there's a missing file and you can't run, it then solves that problem. It's a corrupt cache file that gets happened. And it happens more over Wi-Fi. I think over Ethernet, it doesn't really matter. It's so fast, it never goes wrong.
Yeah, so basically my understanding is now the cache file is persistent since I forgot what version, but that flag should let you make it so that when you quit FileMaker, the cache files are deleted.
Perfect. Well, we created an Apple script, so that'd be a quicker and easier way of doing it. Thank you.
Okay, we're now almost on schedule. Should we move on? Everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we do, I just want to say a quick word that we've lost someone in our community, Shin. I didn't know Shin, but if someone who does know or didn't know her wants to say something about her, that would be great. If someone wants to pop up and say something now. Any of you out there? No, no one knows Shin. I know someone does.
Yeah, I know Shin. I first met Shin probably 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, when at DevCon, when they were doing the what was it, that air guitar thing. It was the band contest, and she was one of the judges, and she was just totally game for whatever. That's one of the things I liked about Shin, is she was always up for whatever. And if it was ridiculous or goofy or whatever, she was in no matter what. She always, at least in recent years, showed up to the .fmp meetings in Berlin. If there was something going on in the FileMaker community, she always wanted to be a part of it. And I don't know what else to say. She's just a good egg all the way around.
Well, that's great. Someone said something nice about her who knew her. So thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Moving on, the next topic is a discussion about Claris and is it taking FileMaker in the right direction for professional developers. Now, I stuck this the agenda up, and within a couple of hours, you'd come back to me, Dan, with some with a thing that you've been doing, getting a petition together and some talks about it. And I know that Jordan's got some views on it, maybe some background. So, given that, do you want to say something about your petition, Dan?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm guessing those of you who haven't seen me might recognize my voice if you've been in the community for a long time. I did a FileMaker podcast for many years ago, and I've been in the FileMaker community as long as anyone. So I own a company called the Datasol. We're a FileMaker Platinum company here in Cleveland, Ohio. We have a mix of products and consulting, and currently are around 14 people. So we're relatively large in the FileMaker space. We, like many of you, have seen some confusing and frustrating things happening from FileMaker over the last X number of years. And I, being the passionate person about it that I am, have taken a number of steps to try to push FileMaker and Claris now to go in certain directions. But none of it has seemed to work very well. And so we frankly started to look at other low-code solutions that we could potentially develop on. And we've spent months doing that. We've looked at low-end solutions like Airtable and Smartsheets, and high-end solutions like Betty Blocks and say it wrong, Open Systems and Mendix. And the end result is that while a lot of them have way more backing than FileMaker and are growing much faster than Claris, in my opinion, none of them offer the rapid development environment that FileMaker does. And I still view the solution as something amazing and miraculous. And I have not seen anything out there. And frankly, I think most of these low-code tools are just misinterpreting what low-code means. And FileMaker has gotten it right from really from day one. So long story short, I reached out to Brad, CEO of FileMaker of Claris, about 2 weeks ago with my concerns, and he reached back, and we had a call last week, and it was over an hour long, and it was somewhat productive, and I was pretty impressed with Brad. I've had other conversations with him over time, but I was impressed again by him and his candor about things.